we're in Prospect Bluff, Franklin County. It was a Negro fort. For many of you who don't know, the Negro fort was first a British fort, and then in 1812.
Right, after the War of 1812 ended. So around 1815, 1816, they leave it to the blacks that helped the British during the war. And these were, of course, Florida Maroons and Black Seminoles.
Okay, and they were living free. And many of them who ended up here were running south.
They were coming here.
They were running from slavery? We keep hearing that many of the enslaved Africans were running here from slavery.
Yes, this is true. Beginning in the mid and late 1600s, Florida was a safe haven. In 1693, the King of Spain declares in an edict of 1693 that anyone who absconds or runs away from the English plantations can come to La Florida and live free. So they have been coming all of this time. Now, specifically for where we are now, they were already living in this area as far down as even into the Tampa area. You had basically three major bands. You had your Gainesville band, your Tampa band, and your St. Augustine band. And so when we say Gainesville band, you have to understand that at that time, Alachua spanned it all the way up to present-day South Georgia. All of that was Alachua, and all the way over till you got to the Tallahassee area. Basically, all of that was considered West Florida. And West Florida was primarily inhabited by Native Americans and free blacks. And so when these free blacks, they agreed to fight with the British during the War of 1812 as a reward, and the fact that the colonel at the time, Nichols, knew that there would be retribution on them for fighting with the British. Nichols himself was an abolitionist, so he knew that many of them were in danger of being enslaved or even re-enslaved.
Okay, so was that the retribution?
Yes.
But they were already free.
They were already free.
Okay.
It was a continuous thing. That's what I'm saying. It's a continuum. People were running away and absconding on a regular basis. They were coming in on a regular basis. This did not stop. So you had, that's why, as we were talking earlier, it was a homogenous group, right? So you did have some blacks that were indigenous. You had some blacks who had direct lineage with Seminoles in their bloodline, whether it was with their father or with their mother, but they had direct bloodline. And then you had some that were simply Maroons who were absconding, right?
Okay.
And many of them, most of them, their origins can be traced back to the Gullah Geechee. Not all, but most. Because you have to remember, once slavery is brought to Florida, primarily through the British when they controlled Florida for those 20 years, they brought plantation society. So you have those that are running away from Tallahassee, running away from St. Augustine, and coming here because this was the beacon of freedom. They're coming from Georgia, they're coming from Carolina still. I think that's what people have to understand, that when you understand that it's a continuum, then you have a much larger group of people now, right? And I'll give you another quick example. I have a good friend. He told me after, he read some of my work, he told me, he was like, I never told you, but this is how my family got to Florida. He said when the Civil War broke out, that his great-great-great-great-grandfather escaped from South Alabama, came into Florida, hid out here in Florida, because by then it was known Florida was where you could hide out. Waited till the war was over. Once the war was over, he went back, got his family, and brought them to Florida.
Okay, wow.
So, that just gives you an idea of how much Florida was recognized, as this safe haven.
Most of the reason why that war was won and Andrew Jackson was able to come and take Negro Fort was because of the Creeks, because of the help from the Creek Indians.
Right, the Creeks were split. This is why we have the Seminoles, right? Your upper Creeks and your lower Creeks were at odds. And so the same way Nichols used the Seminoles and some Creeks, Andrew Jackson used some Creeks. And so That's why some people call the first Seminole War the Second Creek War. Many of them were related when they were fighting in that Patriots War. They were once all Creek.
They like to say that most of the blacks who were here in Florida were slaves to the Native Americans, to the Indians. They were their slaves.
This is why the Creeks had their major schism, because your lower Creeks accepted plantation society and they began to buy and sell and trade enslaved blacks, right? So yes, there were enslaved people to the Creeks. Okay. Now, here's the relationship with the Seminoles. The Seminoles used the term slave because this was the only term that the British as well as the Americans understood, particularly the Americans. So there were times when someone had to claim their own child as their enslaved. A black village, you had a Native American village, right? There would be 3 fields. There'd be one field for natives, one field for blacks, and then a field that they worked together. But that field, all the food went to the natives. And this was because they said, we're the ones who are able to get the guns, the ammunition, the protection. We're the ones that provide the best protection, so you kind of owe us for that. And so this is the idea where Seminoles had slaves themselves too. Seminole Indians did rely on that tribute field. And so blacks were working a field where they didn't get any of the proceeds.
It sounds like the bartering system.
Right, because if the natives went and got guns and whatnot, they shared those guns with blacks because they fought together. They were quite used to the tributes that they got. Okay. And many of them didn't want those tributes to end, and that was part of some of the problem that they had out in Oklahoma, was that they wanted the tribute to continue. And they were like, wow, we all free now, we all there's no need, that kind of thing.
Okay. The Seminole War was lost because the Black Seminoles and the Maroons stopped fighting.
Second Seminole War.
The Second Seminole War was lost. Is that true?
Well, to a certain extent, yes. It was always the understanding that Seminole natives were fighting for the land. Black Seminoles were fighting for freedom. Freedom was the number one priority. And if we could keep the land, then yes, we would keep the land. But make no mistake about it, our freedom is on the line here. And that's our highest priority. And so during the Second Seminole War, when they realized this is not an Indian war, right? This is a Negro war, to which they called it a Negro war.
Who called it that?
Jessup, who was over the American troops.
Okay.
When Jessup does this, right, it's their outward understanding, too, that the blacks are putting up the biggest fight. They're the ones who are holding this whole thing together. And there are even letters where not just Jessup, other ranking military officials are saying, if it weren't for the blacks, this war would have been over. We would have gotten rid of the Seminoles by now. In 1838, they came back with the articles. When they came back with another set of articles of capitulation, they added Article 5, which said, and it's the funny thing, they didn't want to flat out say we've lost to the blacks, we give up, we can't re-enslave them, we give up. They simply said the Seminoles and their allies can be free.
Wow.
So once that was done, yes, many black Seminoles stopped fighting. And so that was part of the contention when it went out west as well.
Okay, so that is true.
Yes, it was always on the table for blacks that freedom was first, not the land. And so that's where the contention ended up coming from. They were guaranteed their freedom.
Does the Seminole Wars have any connection to the Civil War? It's almost like the Civil War was the fourth Seminole War.
Well, here's the real connection. There was a man by the name of Joshua Giddings. He was a abolitionist, and this was years after the Second Seminole War. Joshua Giddings, he's from Ohio, and he's a congressman. So he kept using, he was saying, if this is truly their natural state and they are so happy as you say, why did we just pay for the longest and costliest war? Why did this thing last for 7 years? And why did we have to give them up and get their freedom? He kept using them as the primary example.
The Seminole Wars are the 7 Years' War.
No.
Okay, so it's separate.
Right. The Second Seminole War lasted 7 years. The First Seminole War lasted a little less than 2.
Okay.
And then the Third Seminole War lasted a little less than 3.
Okay.
So together, they were actually about 12 years. And that was the longest, quote-unquote, Indian war. But we know it was not an Indian war.
Especially with your book.
It was a slave rebellion. Joshua Giddings, he wrote the book Exiles in Florida.
Wow.
And when he wrote that book, and he told the whole story, no, here's really what happened, y'all. He challenged everything. And abolitionists used that book and everything else. The Second Seminole War was one of those things, right? It's just not placed in the annals of history the way it should be. It should be right up there with John Brown's raid, the cases.
There are many people looking for books to read now because online, the information is being mixed up. It's being softened, like the context when it comes down to Black history, when it comes down to the Seminole Wars, any information that that includes Black people mainly is being mixed up online. So I would like to ask you, which books do you recommend for the people who are looking for books so they can find out more about their history, the history of Florida, the Seminole Wars, like what you're talking about, which really is the Negro War. Can you give us some recommendations?
My book, Florida's Negro War.
Okay.
Freedom Lest We Die. That was a good one.
That way. He's trying to get to the river.
Oh, yeah. Kanesh's book, just a good general overview of Seminole Wars. Man's History of the Second Seminole War. These are books that will lead you to the primary sources.
Okay.
That's my whole thing. My book, Florida Negroes War, I don't have any citations in it, but it is a full bibliography. There's a full reference section there. So you can go look at these primary documents. You can go look at all of these different things yourself. You want to go to, even if it's a secondary source, right? If it gives you the ability and points out where those primary documents and primary sources are, like Prince. There was a lieutenant in the Second Seminole War who did a full diary. His diary got published and it's vivid. He talks about massacres. He talks about the weariness of the soldiers. He talks about everything.
Which war was he a part of?
Second Seminole War. And then there's Jessup.
Okay.
Jessup's diary. You hear a lot about Osceola, right? But only if you really hear in Florida. You don't get to hear about Osceola the way you hear about Sid Bull, Geronimo, Chief Joseph, right? And the real reason that you don't get to hear about Osceola the way you get to hear about Geronimo and Sid Bull is because Osceola was mixed. His mother was mixed. His grandmother was mixed. But like I was explaining to you earlier, because he was a Seminole Miccosukee as well. He had Miccosukee heritage as well, right? Muskogee heritage too. But because it was matrilineal, he grew up as a Native American. But make no mistake about it, he was mixed.
So his skin color was like mine?
We only really have that one drawing. He's the reddish though. They make him look more native than anything, right? It's the only thing that we really have to go on. But know that they had agendas back then too. When you look at the president of Mexico that abolished slavery, it was because he was black. But when you look at that picture, they changed the features and he looks Mexican. I've seen an original drawing of it.
I was looking for you, and I saw you talking to the doctor before, and when I got ready to have you talk to everybody, I didn't know where you were.
Uh-oh.
So,
Yeah, we were up there by the lake getting some real good information for the people.
okay, all right. Well, wonderful. You handle what you handle, and we will see you when you come back.
Yeah, we're
and
coming.
When you
back up
come
there.
back,
Okay.
you know, I want to make sure that people know who you are, and you can tell them how to get to your site.
Okay.
Okay?
I will do
All
that.
right. Thank you.
With Chief Osceola, when you say they don't talk about him as much, he seems like he's well respected
Oh, yeah.
when it comes down to the Florida State.
Yeah, they respect him
University.
because of his fighting prowessness. And that's, in general, for Native Americans, they respected the fact that they fought back. Now, we almost annihilated you, almost made us wipe you off the earth, but at least you fought back, right? But then it's funny for the blacks who fought back, they don't want to talk about them because they don't want to incite other blacks to fight back.
And then where we at, this location right here, the Negro Fort, blacks were fighting back.
Fighting back.
The powder magazine was blown up. How?
The hot shot. We know that they were doing hot shots now. That was a thing. That's when they take a cannonball, they put it in the fire, let it get red, and then shoot it so that when it goes through the trees, it's setting everything it hits on fire. So it's got a chance to set those trees on fire, get into the brush here, set all of that on fire. This was a fool. It was women and children here, but there were men here fighting as well. And there were women who were fighting. There was a woman that actually manned the cannon.
They wouldn't have got that shot in there. It
Who
probably
knows?
would have ended differently.
Do I think they would have been able to survive it? No, because Andrew Jackson was adamant, and Plantation Society was quite adamant about getting rid of the Negro Fort. That fort meant that this was a settlement on its way to a colony. And to have a colony of free blacks, especially ones who obtained their freedom, could not stand.
Because they were going to attract more.
Right, and they said that Plantation Society could never reach its fullest potential.
Wow. It's just all about keeping us in our place, I guess.
What we have to understand is that whites equivalated our enslavement, our ancestors' enslavement, with survival. That they could not survive without it. The name of the book is Soul by Soul.
Okay.
So no matter what, rape, lynching, beating, whatever they did, the morality of it or immorality of it was justified because they all saw it as something that was deemed necessary for their survival. And what was pointed out to me last year by another good researcher was that exact sentiment was echoed in Mississippi's letter of succession. They flat out said that we would not survive without it. And see, when you listen to them now, right, they always refer back to South Carolina and South Carolina's letter of succession that goes heavily on states' rights, right? But even in that, they mention the fact of how their economic stability is based on this system. But Mississippi, on the other hand, does not just assert this whole thing about states' rights. Mississippi does say this is about our survival, that the enslavement of this quote-unquote inferior group of people is the equivalent to our survival.
That gives me the chills. That gives me the chills because it's almost like that. It's still like that. They're taking our rights away now.
Yes.
They still believe that. Okay. Well, when they hear this part, Mr. Dixon, I don't know how they're going to be able to take that in. Because when I think about it, it's true. They can't survive without us.
No, they can't.
From 1817 to 1858, the United States government engaged in a bitter conflict with the Seminole Nation. This conflict would result in 3 distinct wars. The Second Seminole War, 1835 to 1842, was conducted under the Indian removal policy of the 1830s. This war was a result of the American Plantation Society's relentless effort to enslave the Black Seminole population. It is clear that from the onset of the war, the United States government, military, and state militias grossly underestimated both the determination and the willingness of the Black Seminoles to resist at all costs. Thus, this book will not only make the argument that the Second Seminole War, also known as the Negro War, was indeed a slave rebellion, but also the most successful one in the United States.